my plan for this class, we'll do some ball and socket hip joint yummy stuff. And I'll kind of just say more as we're going along. Some of the movement in the very, very beginning will be tiny. It'll feel really small. And if you're not used to working like that, it might feel like you're not doing anything. But I promise there's a method to my madness. And in fact, we are doing something. We're not going to use it right away, but later we'll use the strap and let's set it up in a loop just so that it's ready for later. And to do that, if you have this kind of strap, you'll put the tail through both buckles and then slide it back through the one. And we want to have a pretty good size loop. So if you're pretty tall, you'll have maybe this much tail. If you're have shorter legs, you'll have a little extra tail left over. But the point is that it's a large loop. And then just set that aside. Otherwise, for props, if you want to have something under your head, you're welcome to set that up, but I don't think we'll need anything else in the beginning. Yeah, I think I'll actually go without. All right, so at first, just come lie down on your back. Yay,
good start.
That's a good start. Got a couple lights, yeah. And give yourself a moment just to transition from the rest of your day to here and now. And start to gather your attention, your awareness to your physical body. And at first, just notice how your body is contacting the floor. In particular, notice the back of your pelvis. Sometimes the right side or the left side feels heavier than the other. Sometimes one side feels higher or lower than the other. Notice the curvature of your lumbar spine. And does it feel like your lumbars are pulling away from the floor? Or are they dropping towards the floor? There will likely be a little bit of space between the back and the floor. Go down to your feet and notice which part of your foot touches. Is it the same on the right and the left? Does one leg feel longer than the other, heavier than the other? And there's no need to adjust. Just get a little baseline and we'll check that again later. Take a gentle turn of your head from side to side. And then as you settle the head in the center, let's bend your knees so your feet stand on the floor. And take your feet a little bit wider than hips width. You might even go as wide as your mat. And at first, let's just do a lazy little windshield wiper. So drop your knees from one side to the other. And I'm going to be more specific about this later, but for right now, just notice how the movement feels. And if it's easier for your body to go to one side or the other side. Do you notice movement not just in the hips, but up in the spine, maybe a weight shift even in the shoulders or the arms? Yeah. And then let's settle the movement down. So bring your legs back to feet on the floor, knees to the ceiling, and bring your feet in slightly so you're back to hips width distance again. Yeah. Then from here, let's think about your pelvis, almost like it's a little rocking chair, and we'll rock a little more towards the tailbone and then more towards the top of the pelvis. Yeah, so it's like cat-cow, but we're on the back. And you might take this rock fairly quickly back and forth, or you might take it really slowly. Sometimes I'll purposely have us coordinate breathing with the movement. And if that's already happening, great. If not, don't worry about that for now. Yeah. And then we'll pause here, just resting your pelvis right in the center. And now, without dropping your knees from side to side, see if you can tip your pelvis so the right side gets a little heavier and the left side lightens up. Yeah. And then do the other one. So take that one a few more times, side to side. And if you are finding that the legs want to sway with the movement of the pelvis, do a little bit less so that your legs can stay more or less in the same position. Yeah. And when that's happening, if you think about the ball and socket, it's kind of like the socket moving over the ball rather than the ball moving within the socket. Yeah. And then we'll pause, settle here, take a breath. And move your attention to the very, very tip of your tailbone. And from here, we'll start to trace a circle. So go ahead and start that motion, and I'll suggest a pretty small circle. So your tailbone, like you're trying to trace the outside of a quarter, really little movement. And as the circle is happening, you might notice parts of the circle sometimes get skipped or sometimes feel a little sticky. Or sometimes instead of the round edge, the circle turns into like a flat line. So as you're going along, as if you're polishing a stone, see if you can really start to smooth out the circle. And also have an even tempo throughout the movement so that there's not a quick part of movement and then a slow part, but it's pretty even all the way around. Yeah. And then once we get that going, we'll change directions. So start to go the other direction, and you might find that your circle is a little lumpy or a little flat. See if you can start the process again. Nice, smooth, even, round circle. And as this is happening with the tailbone, keep the movement going, but put your awareness here in the hip joints. And see if you can feel a little bit of that, the socket moving around the ball. Yeah. Okay. And then let's take a little break from that. Just pause. Re-lengthen your legs for a moment. And take a brief little check-in here, noticing if your body is meeting the floor differently, particularly in the low back curve and the way the feet are meeting the floor. Yeah. So then let's come back to feet standing again, knees on the ceiling. And starting with your right leg, put your attention now in the tip of your knee, the front of the knee, and let's trace a circle now on the ceiling with your knee. And as the knee is drawing the circle, there'll be a weight shift in your foot. And there'll also be really small, subtle movement of the ball and the hip moving in the socket. So put your awareness there in the hip joint and see if just like the other circle, you could make this movement as smooth, as round, as even as possible as we circle our right knee. Notice too, at any point in the circle, if there's like a kind of grippiness or a point of tension, for me, that's usually right in the front of the hip if it happens. And if you find something like that, can you do the movement without the grip? That might mean you slow down or maybe make the circle even littler. Yeah, and then let's go the other direction, still on the right knee. Just the circle going the other way. And same thing here, smooth, round, even tempo. Noticing any grip. Is it possible to go without the grip? Yeah. And then from there, let the movement settle. And then let's take your right knee and bring it out to the right side like a Baddha Konasana leg. And then come back to center, and I'll say more here. So the next time we go and you take the knee to the right, can you do that without the pelvis also tipping to the right? And that might mean you do less. Yeah, and then come back to center. And take a couple more times, just like that. So a right leg in Baddha Konasana, back to center. Yeah. And then the next time the leg comes back to center, let's pause and then step your right foot just a little bit wider. So you might meet the edge of the mat, or it's okay if you go a little off the mat. And now without wiggling the pelvis from side to side, take the right knee and now bring it in towards the midline, going to the big toe side of your foot. And then back to center again. And do just that much a couple of times. So this is a little bit of an internal rotation as well as adduction, if you're familiar with those terms. Yeah. And then we'll add this to the other one. So next time the leg comes up, we'll go to the Baddha Konasana leg, bringing the knee out to the right. So do that alternating. We'll roll in and then we'll roll out. And just like when we were making that circle, see if you can do this movement without any kind of grippiness anywhere around the hip joint. And that might mean you do less or go slower. Totally fine. Yeah. And then next time the knee goes to the right, stay there. And now do let the pelvis come with the leg. So the right thigh will go all the way or more towards the floor and the left hip will lift. Do keep the left knee though pointing up towards the center rather than dropping the left knee in. Now let's pay attention to the outside, the pinky side of your right foot, and lift the heel away from the floor. And then put the heel down and lift the toes, the toe part of the foot away from the floor. And do that a few times. So the heel lifts and then the toes lift. And as this is happening, keep going, but put your awareness in the hip joint itself. And it's very subtle, but you might notice that when you lift the heel, there's a little tiny bit more external rotation. And then when we put the heel down and lift the toes, there's a little bit more of the internal. All right. And then relax your foot, come back to center. And now from here, let's take the left foot also a little bit wider so you've got some space. Take the right knee in towards the midline, and as you do, lift the right side of your pelvis, but keep the left leg more or less in place. And then come back to center and take your right knee to the right and lift the left side of the pelvis, keeping the left knee pointing to the ceiling. Come back to center. So we'll do that a few times. The right knee drops in, lift the right pelvis, and then the right knee drops out and we lift the left pelvis. So it's kind of like the windshield wipers, but mostly moving the right leg here. And take a couple more rounds with your awareness in the right hip ball and socket. And notice that at certain points in the movement, the ball is moving in the socket. At other points, the socket is moving around the ball. And then there might also be points where they're both moving around each other. Yeah. So let's keep going, the right side leading the way. And put your attention in the left side and notice that the left leg is relatively still. So it's mostly on the left side, the socket moving around the ball. Yeah, a couple more times. Good. And then we'll come back to center. Bring your feet back to middle. And then let's check out, before we do this all on the left side, put legs long on the floor again and just take a little notice. For me, my right leg appears closer to the floor than the left. You might notice the same or something else going on. All right. And then let's try the other side. So stand your 2 feet on the floor. And for the first part, we'll keep the feet about hips width distance. And on the left side, let's start with that tiny little circle, drawing your knee on the ceiling. But as that's happening with the knee, notice the weight shift in your foot and the movement of the ball in the socket. Can you make the movement in the hip joint as smooth as possible? The circle as round and even as possible. Minimize any grippiness, even if you have to do less. And then we'll go the other direction. Sometimes more is more, but in this kind of practice, actually less is more. And it can be somewhat challenging to do that. And then we'll pause, just take a moment. And when you're ready, take the left knee to the side like Baddha Konasana, keeping the pelvis relatively still. And then back to center we come. So do that a couple of times. We're rolling towards the pinky side of the foot and then back to middle. And you might notice now that we're on the second side that there's a different range of motion or just a different quality to the movement. Sometimes that is the case. And I'm going to suggest for this kind of practice, don't try to make them match, just be wherever you are. Okay. And then the next time the leg comes back up, we'll pause and widen the left foot a little bit so you've got some more room. And then go to the internal, rolling towards the big toe side of the foot and back to center. So do that one a couple of times, still keeping the pelvis relatively still. I didn't mention this on the first side, but sometimes when we roll in, folks report kind of like a pinching in the hip. If that ever happens, do less. We'll stop at the point before the pinch happens if it does. And then let's add the going out and going in, still keeping the pelvis still, which means we're moving within our true range of motion in the hip joint itself. So this is the ball moving in the socket. And then the next time the knee goes out to the left, allow the pelvis to come with the leg. So the thigh will go closer to the floor. The right hip will come up a little bit. And then once you're there, let's lift the left heel and bring it down and lift the toes. And do that alternating, one and then the other. And as you're doing it, notice if you feel anything at all in the hip joint. And if you're feeling something, it's likely to be really subtle. So just if you're not feeling it, don't worry. And then we'll pause, the leg back to center. And now widen your right foot a little bit, and we'll still work with the left leg. Bring the knee in towards the midline and then lift the left side of the pelvis, keeping the right leg mostly in place. Come back through center and take the knee to the left and lift the right side of the pelvis. Yeah, and back to center. So do this one a few more times. The left leg is doing the windshield wiper motion and the right leg is relatively still. And let's notice this on the left side. Notice where it's the ball in the ball moving in the socket moving around the ball, and where they're both moving around each other. Notice as you're doing this on the right side, it's mostly the socket moving around the ball. And they're both good endeavors to pursue. When we move around, we're doing all of the above just in life. And sometimes it gets a little stuck. So today we're putting a little oil in the joints. Let's come back to center. Yeah. And then take your legs long again. Get out. So now from here, let's keep your left leg long on the floor. Bend your right knee and take the right foot about as wide as your mat. Then from here, press into your right foot until the right side of the pelvis lifts and you kind of shift your weight towards the left side a little bit. And then come back down and plant your right foot in a new spot, maybe a little further forward. Do that again. Press into the foot until the right pelvis lifts and you shift your weight a little to the left and down. Let's do this a few times, and every time you go, put your foot in a new spot. And a few little suggestions here. Just like when we were doing the previous movement, try not to let the knee go from side to side. So keep the knee more or less pointing towards the ceiling. Notice as you press into the foot and that side of the pelvis lifts, notice if the low back muscles get tense and overly engaged. And if they do, see if you can do less in that department and let it really just be this weight transfer, this pushing down of one foot to move the weight over to the other side. Yeah. So we're going to keep going, but add in a little element here. Take a pause for a second and bring your left arm up by your head, just a long arm. And then the next time you press into the right foot, sweep your right arm out to the side and up by your head until you roll a little more onto the left side. You can lift the right heel if that gives you some more space. And then we'll come down, plant your foot, right foot in a new spot, go again. Press into the foot, sweep your right arm out and overhead, and then come down. So take that just a couple more here on this side. Yeah. You want, you can be really big and dramatic with it. If you prefer to keep it kind of small and quiet, that's fine too. I should have told you to clear the way. Sometimes there's props in the way. Yeah. All right. And then from here, let's pause. We'll just take a little regroup, release the right leg down and the right arm down, and take again a little right-left comparison from doing that one. And then on side two here, let's start this one up. So plant the left foot, and at first we'll just do the lower body a couple of times. So as you press into the foot, rock towards the right side of the pelvis, and then come back down and plant your foot in a new place, press down as you find that weight transfer. Take that a couple of times here on side 2. And same thing, try to keep the knee more or less pointing towards the ceiling rather than rolling in. And notice if your low back gets overly involved, see if you can do less there so that it's less of a low back thing and more of a just a push into the floor weight transfer thing. Yeah. Whenever you're ready to add in the arms, you can have the right arm up by your head. And as the left foot pushes, sweep the arm overhead and roll towards the right side. Yeah. And then you'll undo, replant the foot, new spot, go again. And take this a couple more times at your own pace. There's something behind me. I realized it was the computer. I hope, Mary, I don't mess you up. Pushing the buttons. All right, guys, let's finish up one more. I could personally do this for an hour, but we're not going to do that for an hour. And then once you come down again, release your legs. Take a last, not a last, but another check-in. And then let's check our windshield wiper again. So we did one in the beginning. So take your feet on the floor wide and just move your knees from side to side and see if the movement feels any different than it did before. And for me, it felt pretty good the first time, but now it's like silk. Okay, so let's come back to center with the legs. Keep your knees bent and bring the feet in a little bit. This next request is kind of an odd one. So use your arms as best you can to pick up the right leg, but just let the leg be kind of heavy. And then drop the leg and just let the foot kerplop. And do that a few times on the right side. It's a little kerplop, and luckily we're on the ground floor here, so there's nobody to irritate below us. And as you do this little kerplop, really just let the leg fall like a rock and don't try to place it perfectly, nor don't just stamp it down, just let it fall. And as you're doing this, every time you drop the leg, picture in your mind's eye the ball just ever so slightly deeper into the socket. A lot of what we do in life pulls it kind of forward. So much of this work is hoping to reset it back a little bit. Yeah. Okay, and then release that. And just from that, let's check it out. Lengthen your legs both sides. And see if your right one's any closer to the floor. And the left. And if it isn't, that's okay too. We get a little extra bonus proprioception in the soles of the feet by doing that, and some other good things too. Let's bend your knees, and we'll do the left side. Pick it up and drop it. And then if you've taken my classes before, sometimes I'll do a slightly different version of this. So if you've wondered, oh, sometimes we do it this way. Yeah, sometimes we do it a different way. But today, this is how we're going to drop the leg. Yeah. Good, 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 good. All right, just a couple more here on the left side, and then we'll check the left. Yeah, and then re-lengthen and see if they're a little more even or if anything is shifted again. So we've moved our limbs around quite a bit here. I'm hoping you still have that strap available. So go find it. And then as we set this next one up, bring the left foot in the strap and do your best to put the strap right at the ball of your foot. Also have the buckle not by your foot so you can use it if you need to. And then you'll put the left leg long on the floor, put your right knee through the loop, and put the other end of the loop at the right hip crease. And I apologize, I have black pants and a black strap, but if you need to see, it looks like this. Zach, so put your left leg on the floor and then bring your right knee through the hole. Yeah, that's it. And then bring the right knee more towards your chest, and you'll tighten up the strap from there so that we want there to be a little bit of tension on the strap, and you'll ultimately be holding onto the right shin with your hands. Yeah. So don't tighten it too much before you pull the shin in, because then you'll get stuck. I'll wait for a second. Yeah. And also make sure the buckle's not on your skin, because that can be irritating. So when you're in this position, once you've gotten this setup, use your left foot. Just press and release a couple of times into the strap, and then the other end of the strap will do a little pull on your hip crease. You feel that? Yeah. And then let's keep a little bit of that push, a little bit of that tension, and then hold your hands now behind the right thigh and take a couple times to bend and straighten the right knee. And we've not really done anything to stretch out the hammies. So if they're really tight, just go to your version of straight. It's fine. But do keep the left leg active and the left foot pressing on the strap so that we keep the hip crease being pulled down. Yeah. Great. Okay. And the next time we bend the knee, we'll stay. Now, put the right hand on your right shin and take the leg out to the right diagonal and see if you can keep that push of the left foot. Yeah. We'll just hold here for a moment. In this position, typically the right hip will want to lift up. The strap holding it here is helping to keep it down. Now let's come back through center. And as we take this twist, bringing the right leg to the left, see if you can keep the knee up. Don't let the knee come down. If the knee goes down, you'll lose some of the tension on the strap, and keep this push of the left foot. Doesn't matter how far over you go. Okay. And the left leg might be a little tired. Mine is. Go back to center. Last time, we'll hold behind the right thigh again. This time, stretch the leg up and just hold it there. Yeah. And then keeping all of that, let's do a little point flex with your right foot. Now later, when we come up to stand, which will be pretty soon, I'm going to have us take a warrior one position with the strap in a similar setup. So you know that's coming. All right, and then relax that. Let's bend the knee. And now as you change legs, it should be, the strap should be about the right size as you put your right ball of the foot in and then pull the left knee towards your chest. If you need to make an adjustment, go ahead and do that now. And then holds on the left leg, and on the right side, do a little press release, like you're stepping on the gas pedal. And when you do that, feel how the other end of the strap pulls your hip crease down. Now, of course, I forgot to say this on side one. If your leg starts to go numb, move the strap a little bit. There's some veins and nerves and stuff here that we don't want to irritate. All right, let's pause. Next time you're pressing the right foot, hold on behind the thigh and now take a couple times to bend and straighten the left leg. And don't be alarmed if it's pretty tight and you don't go all the way straight. That's okay. Here too, the left hip has a tendency to creep up when we straighten the leg, so the strap is helping to hold it down. So we'll pause with the knee bent. Move the knee into your left hand and take the leg out on the left diagonal and keep pressing down with your right foot. And then we'll come back to center, and now do your best not to drop or lower the knee as we twist, and keep this push of the right foot into the strap. Yeah. And someday we'll do this again with two straps, and we'll have one strap around the up leg and this other strap on the down leg, but we'll save that for another adventure. Let's come back to center. Yeah. And then last time, hold behind the thigh, stretch up through your left leg and do a little point flex. Great. Okay. And then we'll pause, bend the knee, release the tension on the strap, and we'll put the strap aside. And let's take one more round of our windshield wipers here before we turn over. So just a couple, one side, other side, and it might feel different again. Yeah. Now as you're going along like this, just think about a nice smooth glide in the hip joints themselves. And when you're ready to be done with this, we'll come back to center. And then take as much time as you need to turn over. We'll ultimately need in the all fours position, but you could take 10 minutes if you want to get there. And then once you do, start to move around in any way that you like. But as you're going along, think about that nice, smooth, easy glide in the ball and socket hip joints. Great. And then from here, we'll just gradually settle our movement and take a breath in. And then as you exhale, press into the floor, round the back, and shift back towards child's pose. Doesn't matter how far you go. And then on the inhale, we'll come back to our all fours position. Exhale, we'll go again, but go ever so slightly to the right. And you come back, and you might not go as far. And then back to center, and on the next one, ever so slightly to the left. Yeah, think of that smooth glide in the hip joints. We'll alternate one side, other side. And also think about softening right at the front of the hip, right at the hip crease as you shift back. And it's a-okay if it's a very different story from side one to side two. Yeah. And then after the next time you do the left side, let's do one just straight through the middle. Back to child's pose. We're going to move on from here. So take a little pause once you get there. And then we'll press down into the floor, around the back, coming first through cat pose, but continue forward until your chest and your head lift. And then we'll bend the elbows, lower down to the belly. Yeah. From here, take a little rest. Put your forehead on your hands. Bend both knees so your feet are up in the air and give them a little swish from side to side. And notice here how there's a little bit of that windshield wiper element. Rotation in the legs. It's a little shift on the pelvis from the front. We'll settle the movement down. Lower your legs back down. Press back again to child's pose, but this time don't go all the way back. Keep your hips a little lifted and let's tuck the toes under. Yeah. Lift the knees away from the floor. Give the mat a little push down and forward. And as you do, remember the strap at the front of the thighs. Pretend you've got one on each leg here, pulling your thighs back away from your hands. And then slowly from there, start to re-lengthen your legs. And you might find that it would feel good or necessary to pedal a little bit. You can add that in. Maybe take a little weight shift as well. All right. And then we'll settle the movement down. Take a little step apart with your legs. Bend your knees and crawl your arms back to the legs. And prop up for a moment with the forearms on your thighs. Yeah. So here, just shift your weight. Let's go to the right and then slightly back, and then to the left and slightly back, drawing a figure eight. Yeah, do that a couple of times. And then we'll settle that movement. Put your weight into both heels. Let's use the inhale to come up, lift the arms. And the exhale to lower your arms. We made it 45 minutes to class and we're finally standing, yogis. Let's bring your feet a little bit in, but still wider than your usual stance. Bend your knees a little bit, and let's take a big circle with the hips. And as that's happening, just kind of initiate this with the pelvis. Think about that smooth glide still in the ball and socket joints. Great. Go the other direction with that one. Awesome. And now we'll continue this kind of movement. Pretend your pelvis is really, really heavy and let the rest of the body come along for the ride. And anything is fine. You can do circles still, you can do more of a figure eight, but you've got this big heavy pelvis that's guiding you. Awesome. All right. And then we'll settle that down. Let's stay at the back of the mat, but bring your feet right underneath you so you're about hips width distance. On the inhale, we'll lift the arms. And as we exhale, bend the knees, deepen the hip creases as we come down into forward fold with bent knees. Yeah. Put your hands on your shins. Inhale, stretch your legs long and move your chest forward. And then exhale, come down, bend your knees, deepen the hip creases. Do that half lift again. And down. Yeah. We'll take it just one more time. And then once we're back down again, walk your hands out until you get into downward facing dog pose. Yeah. And then once you have that settled, press your right heel towards the floor with a straight leg. Bend your left knee. We'll be here and just shift your hips from side to side a couple of times. Yeah. In addition to some hip joint movement, we get a stretch in the right calf. Let's pause and change. Bend your right knee, press the left heel downward and towards the back of the mat, and add in this little side to side. Good. Okay, and then pause here, reset, downward dog. Let's meet in a forward fold. Any kind of transition is fine. Root down through your heels. Use the inhale to come up, lift the arms. And the exhale to lower. All right, everybody. So let's pick up your big strap loop. And it should be about the right size if you left it from where we had it before. And make sure the buckle is close to your hand so you can adjust it if necessary. We'll stand at the front of the mat and step both feet through the hole, through the loop. And then here's where it's a little tricky. We'll put the strap at the right heel, and you don't want it in the arch of the foot. You really want it at the heel. Hold it so it stays taut as you step the right leg back with the heel down. Yeah. And Zach, clear that blanket. And then from there, you can tighten it enough so that it stays put on its own, but not so tight that it cuts off the circulation. Yeah. All right. So once we have that, we're there. Just put your hands on your hips and bend the front knee until the strap catches you. So you're not going to come all the way into the deepest warrior one, but what we want is for this strap to create a little, kind of a little spacer. And let's use our hands to enhance that. Take your right hand to the top of the left thigh and the left hand on the front of the pelvis and push your hands away from each other to give this idea of space right there in the front. Yeah. And then from there, we'll pause. The back heel. Keep it pressing down. Let's lift the arms out and up. And then if you're able to, scooch the front foot a little further forward and then bend and sit a little lower in the pose, you can. Think of lifting the rib cage here away from the pelvis, and the strap is pulling the thigh bone down towards the floor. I'll just stay for another moment. This is one of my favorite ways to do Warrior One. I know the entry is a little awkward. All right, guys, when you're ready, let's come back up. You can release that. Just turn your legs to the right to get out, and then heel toe in a little bit. All right, and then we'll set up for side two. Same thing. Oh, let's take a little walk for a second. How are those hips?
Juicy.
All right, mine too. Let's do the other side. So same thing. Step both feet through the hole. Then you'll put the left heel on the strap and hold it so it stays put as you step back. Yeah, if you need to make an adjustment, go ahead and do. Zach, stay there. I'm just going to fool with it for a second. No, don't go anywhere. Yeah, it's hard to adjust on your own sometimes. All right. And then once we have that, start to bend the front knee and just go until the strap catches you. So it won't be a super deep bend. Yeah. And then let's do this hand thing. Left hand to the front of the right thigh, right hand on the pelvis, and separate. Move them away from each other. And do that a couple of times. Yeah. Good. And then pause. Let's, if you can, scooch the right foot a little further forward and go a little deeper. And then let's let go. Take the arms up, lift the rib cage away from the pelvis, and continue this push of the back foot down into the strap, pulling the legs down, but at the same time we're nice and lifted up above. Yeah. All right, yogis. And then when you're ready to get out, lengthen the front leg. Just pivot a little to your left and then come out like that. Okay. And then we'll put the strap aside. Let's stand, take a little hula hoop for a second. Oh, yeah. Okay. And then go the other direction. The hula hoop has improved too, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. I wish I had you for more time, but we have time for one more pose. So this will be a lizard pose with blocks. And I'll talk you through it as we go. I think I've done this with you. Zach and Mary's done it with me. So have 2 blocks. And we'll step the right leg back and we'll put 1 block on the highest height. It's going to go above the kneecap on your thigh. Then the left foot can go wide, and you can put your hands on the other block, or if you don't want it, you can put your hands on the floor. Yeah. All right. And then Zach, widen your left foot a little bit and put your arm on the inside. Yeah, and you can have the other block if necessary. Now, this back leg that's on the block, just let it kind of relax over the block and do a little forward back motion. And as you're doing that, in your mind's eye, picture the block just lovingly pressing the ball deeper into the socket. Yeah. If it would feel okay to do either a little side-to-side wiggle or more of a circular motion, you're welcome to also do that. Yeah. The other direction if you're making circles. Now I'm fully aware that many of you might actually feel more sensation in the front leg than in the back, and that's certainly possible. But think about the back leg for a moment as getting the focus of this little exercise. Yeah. Okay, and then we'll pause. If your hands are on the block, let's put them on the floor. Lift the back thigh to get off of the block, and then go into down dog for a moment. And just from doing that, have a look at your legs. And some of you might have the right leg a little further back now than the left. And as a result, the heel may be a little closer to the floor. Ah, okay. So we'll do the second side. Go ahead and just get there. So we'll start in the lunge with the right leg forward. put the block on the left side, just above the knee. And then walk your right leg wider so you can bring your arms to the inside. Feel free to grab a second block for your hands. Yeah, Zach, you got it. And you guys are both on skin, but these blocks are fairly soft, so yeah, you're tough. All right, go back and forth. I first learned this in a studio. They only had those wooden blocks, and it was a little much. You don't want to leave yoga and have bruises on your leg. Now you can stick with this. You can add in the circles. You could do a little side to side just to change the movement slightly. And part of that is just to keep you here longer. Marinate in the pose. Yeah. Go the other way if you did some circles. Okay. And then let's pause. Put your hands to the floor, lift the back thigh, get rid of the block, and then head into your down dog. And check it. All right. Yeah, hey, look at you, Zach. Nice job, guys. Let's take a child's pose. Lower your knees down and slowly shift back and think about again that depth in the front of the hips as you make the transition. Let's pause here, take a few breaths. And then as you're ready, let's turn over. We'll come to your back again and check out our windshield wipers. So time flies when you're having fun. Take a few rounds more and just notice if you don't even have to pinpoint it, but just notice if there's been a change. And then we'll settle the movement down and go ahead and re-lengthen your legs. And if you ultimately don't want to be here for Shavasana, just have whatever props you want for Shavasana. But let's take a little recheck of this position here. So notice just how your body meets the floor. In particular, the low back and its curves. The two sides of your pelvis. Your 2 feet. We'll stay here for a few minutes. If you need to change your orientation, go ahead and do. Bring your awareness back to your body. And take a few conscious breaths. And if it would feel good to turn your head from side to side, you can add that in. And take any other movement, something gentle as we begin the transition out of Shavasana. Eventually, you can bend your knees and roll to one side. And then from there, come into any seated position. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste.
Namaste.